everyone. Very good morning, afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you all for joining us today. It's very important. This is the first webinar that we're kicking off from Global Alliance, and we're so excited because this talks about our health and well-being. We are very happy that we can now meet with you and do activities together again, albeit virtually, to celebrate our annual Health and Wellbeing Month this January. To celebrate this special occasion, Global Alliance has come up with a series of activities designed to assist for our communication practitioners to keep fit and healthy. The Alliance has also put together courses, tips of the day, the latest research, global news, and podcasts that are aimed at helping practitioners grow personally and professionally. The culmination of all these efforts in health and well-being webinar that would feature health specialists and industry experts as they share tips to assist practitioners in their professional lives. To formally kick off the session, I would now like to turn the floor over to Fiona Cassidy, Executive Leader, Mentor, and Educator, and also Director of Ever Consulting in New Zealand. Ms. Cassidy is the chairperson of our Health and Wellbeing Month celebrating today. With all due respect, I would like to call on our chairperson for the Health and Wellbeing Month, Miss Fiona Cassidy.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you everybody who has decided to join us online today. I'm Fiona. I'm way down under in New Zealand. Look, January 2024, it's all about us and Health and Wellbeing Month. We know that as practitioners, the last few years have been really difficult, and many of us are still dealing with looming deadlines. As we start a new year, we have competing projects and work pressures. Often in all the busyness, we forget to take time for ourselves and often end up feeling tired and run down and actually not giving us our best, either personally or professionally. Health and wellbeing is now a part of business as usual. And as PR and comms and management practitioners, it's important that we have the up-to-date information in both our personal and professional toolkits so we can be the best we can be for our families, for our colleagues, and for those we work with. Remember, we need to look after our health and wellbeing so we can operate at our best. Today's seminar is actually the last in a series of activities, and we have left the best for last. Today, we're going to hear about environmental factors and stresses and find out what we can do to ensure not only do we look after our physical health, but we also look after our mental health and those we work with. Thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you at the end.
Thank you very much, Fiona. I totally agree with what you said. Indeed, as PR practitioners, we also need to look after our health and well-being so we can operate at our best. So to tell us more about the importance of mental health and how to navigate the challenges that come with the profession, I'd now like to introduce to you our first speaker, a tireless leader and skilled advocate in nonprofit, government, social impact, and civil society organizations. She has worked with many public sector organizations, including the South Sydney City Council, the NSW state government, and the Australian Human Rights Commission. She now has 25 years of experience in news media, public affairs, external relations, and advocacy with the domestic and international Asian region REMIT. She is also the past president of the Public Relations Institute of Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause, please, for Miss Jennifer Muir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this really important topic. It is an absolute passion of mine. Before we kick off, I'd like to pose a question to you all, one that I just want you to keep in the back of your mind as we're going through today's webinar. Have a think about how often or at all you have thought about or even taken care of your own mental health and well-being while over the past 4 years, particularly over the past 4 years with all of the things that that have been going on. If you can just keep that in your mind, and we'll sort of come back to that, circle back to it at the end. Next, please. Okay, so you may have heard this before, but I'm going to emphasize it right up front. Your mental health is just as important to your lives as your physical health. Your mental health is not the same thing as the absence of mental illness. It can influence how you feel about yourself, the world, and your life, and it has a definite impact on what you do in your workplace. So it is vitally important. Today, we're going to take you through a perspective from the global perspective to how you and your community interact with regard to your mental health in your workplaces, and how to take care of yourself. So I'm just going to, just pause a little bit. From a global snapshot, throughout our lives, our multiple individual and social and structural determinants may combine to protect or to undermine our mental health and shift our position to our mental illnesses. Individual psychological, biological factors such as emotional skills, substance use, and genetics can make people more vulnerable to mental health problems. Exposure to unfavorable, social, economic, geopolitical, environmental circumstances, including poverty, violence, inequality, and environmental deprivation, also increase our risk of experiencing mental health conditions. Mental health risks and protective factors can be found in our societies in different scales, but local threats can heighten our individual, our families, and our communities' risks. Global threats such as economic downturns, disease, humanitarian emergencies, conflicts, forced displacement, and climate crises can also have a significant impact on our mental health and well-being. A few quick snapshot stats for you. 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experience a mental disorder. That's 13% of the global burden of disease for this age group. Depression and anxiety and behavioural disorders are the leading cause of illness and disability among this age group. Suicide is the 4th leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. And there's more than 700,000 people will die by suicide each year. And for every person that suicides, there are a number of people that also have their mental health affected. Despite our understanding and progress in some countries, people with mental health conditions often experience severe human rights violations, discrimination, and stigma. So, as I said, the past 4 years have been a very, very intense scenario. Most of us have experienced high levels of stress and intensity of emotions from our personal and professional lives, as Fiona has mentioned. Professional communicators have had a front row seat to a lot of this, and that experience has been often sustained and has had an impact on our mental health and well-being. Throughout the COVID pandemic, Anxiety has gone up by 28% and depression has gone up by 25%. With this scenario, I think it's safe to say that uncertainty is going to be a constant feeling in our immediate future. And the feelings that that brings about for us, we need to understand and be equipped to manage, which we're going to talk about today. Just a few other scenarios with this situation globally is we're about to have this year, we've already had a couple already, 64 countries having national elections. That's the first time that many elections have happened in the modern world. The impact of some of those may shift power and influence and have a serious impact on the safety and stability globally. Combine that with the tail end of COVID, which most of us are still have the impacts of. We also have freedom of speech, the impact of AI, and the functions of democracy all under attack. We also have, from a professional perspective, a tone of discussion globally and in our communities that is a lot more strained. It is a lot more combative. And for us as communicators, there is a powerful sort of feedback loop that we are often caught in and being held responsible for, which can increase our stress levels. And then the last scenario that we're all dealing with is the changes to the way that we do our work, our workplaces, our work from home scenarios. The culture of our workplaces has forever changed, and we're needing to deal with that as well. So I'd like to, as we're sort of going through today, it's important for us to understand how we sit in the concentric circles of the communities and the individuals that we interact with every day. Talking out about our mental health does not cause an increase in mental health issues or diagnoses, but rather allows for individuals to seek help at lower levels of care. Promotion and prevention interventions work by identifying the individual, social and structural determinants of mental health, and then intervening. And I'll get to the role that we can very successfully play in that as professional communicators. Everyone's mental health is a journey, and it is different, as we are all individual human beings. But it's important that we understand how to care for ourselves, how to connect with our families, our communities, and especially our workplaces. Strong ties with these communities and individuals strengthen our mental health and well-being. But as we've mentioned, if we don't take care of these factors and if we're not mindful and looking out for them, particularly serious negative factors like child abuse, trauma, neglect, social isolation, and loneliness, people experiencing discrimination and stigma, or even racism, we run the risk of exacerbating and having a negative impact on ours and other people's mental health and well-being. Next. Now, there's been a couple of global studies done on PR and communication professionals' mental health and well-being. I just wanted to share some of the results of those because it's worth understanding that we do share very common experiences. Yes, we can be different culturally, but we do share professionally some of those experiences. In Australia, we did a study, and a study's been done each year for what they call the creative industries, which include PR and communication. 46% of the creative industries displayed mild to severe levels of anxiety. That was actually an improvement on the year before in the middle of COVID, but still quite high and definitely above the average other industries and professions. Again, 46% displayed severe levels of depression, 19% show severe levels of depression, 14% show severe levels of anxiety, but again, improved. Interestingly, those of our generation, millennials and Gen Alphas under 29 years of age were 1.5 times more likely to show symptoms of depression than those over 49. It's really important when we're looking at the intergenerational messaging and the way our workplaces work. Next. In the UK and the US, they did a more specific study on PR and comms professionals. It was a survey of members of both of their peak bodies. I'll just cherry pick a couple of these pieces of data for you. 90% of those in PR have experienced mental health issues to some extent in the past year, and that was last year, that was 2022 that was done. 95% of PR professionals believe their workplace has a role to play in their mental health and well-being. 75% of those speaking up found their workplace to be understanding and supportive, which was a really positive sign. However, 60% felt that considerable improvements needed to be made. 79% of those in PR rated their organisation's handling of the pandemic as good, which is a really nice statistic. I think that we can hopefully see that run around globally. I know that the Global Alliance did a lot, lent in those periods of time to support as many people as possible. But what I think is interesting as we consider, next, Matthias, what are the factors in our workplace that create poor mental health and well-being on us and very much go to the culture. In the same survey in the UK and the US, the number one factor was having too much to do, the workload being overwhelming. Other one was another sort of high stat was impending deadlines and targets and the impact on those. And then some other ones include unclear expectations and the demands from co-workers. And one that's rarely understood but needs to have a really big focus is the way that your job is designed and the sense of dependability that you can have on the way your job is designed. Next, Matthias. Now, this leads us to good work helps your mental health and well-being. It contributes to your daily activity, your sense of purpose, of course, your income, and your social connection. But poor working conditions can harm your mental health and well-being very quickly. In order to have your good mental health at work, you need to have decent work. Poor working conditions, including discrimination and inequality, excessive workloads, low job controls and job security pose risks to your mental health. 15% of working adults were estimated to have mental health disorders in 2020. Globally, and this is, if you need one clear economic motivator, 12 billion, that's with a B, working days are lost every year to depression and anxiety, a cost of $1 trillion per year in lost productivity. But work can also be a protective factor. 60% of the world's population is at work, and if their environments are safe and healthy, then that's a good thing for their health and their mental health. Decent work supports good mental health by providing you with a livelihood, a sense of confidence and purpose, an opportunity for positive relationships, a platform for structured routines. For people that live with a mental disorder, decent work can contribute to their recovery and inclusion and improve their confidence. Safe and healthy working environments are not only a fundamental right as a human right, but are also more likely to minimize tension and conflicts. Conversely, a lack of effective structures and support at work can be the fastest contributor to people leaving their jobs, people living with poor mental health, and people and the organisation actually being really poor at what they're supposed to be doing. Next. What influences poor mental health at work, just as a continuation on that list for you? Underuse of your skills. If you feel like you're being not utilised for what you can do, then it has a poor impact on you. Obviously, as we said, excessive workloads, long, unsocial and inflexible hours. And these are very specific to the PR and comms profession. Lack of control over your job design and your workload, unsafe and poor physical working conditions, organisational culture that enables bad and negative behaviours and protects bullies and people that have a negative impact on the organisation, violence, harassment and bullying, discrimination and exclusion, under or over promotion, if people are working way beyond their ability or, as we said earlier, really under their ability. Poor job insecurity, a lack of flexibility and understanding on the demands you have across your whole life. And one very specific to the PR and communication industry is a higher exposure to traumatic events and information, and a high volume of exposure to that. Often we have work conditions and external stresses that, as Fiona mentioned in the opening, are serious exposures and dangers to our mental health. Next. But conversely, what is good for our mental health in the workplace? Clarity on what we're doing, an understanding of the effort required to do what we're doing, fair treatment, good support, good environmental factors, the relationships that we have, as this is fundamental to what we do, are nurtured and supported and really clearly understood, that we have the right training and skills and the tools to do our jobs, that communication is clear and consistent about change at work. And this is the big one for us globally, that safety practices for de-stressing your exposure to dangerous content and information are in place. Just like any physical workplace safety, there needs to be an application of mental health safety practices put into the workplace. Next. Just looking to see, yep. Core components for a good mentally healthy workplace. This is not rocket science, but the three tenets are to protect against risks to mental health, to promote well-being and the positive aspects of work, and to support people with poor mental health. There are quite a number of case studies and a lot of research around the benefits of a mentally healthy workplace. And I think that definitely from a public relations and communication industry perspective, creating mentally healthy workplaces is going to be a win-win for the whole profession and for our profession, for us as professionals. But key to that, those changes, making those changes, is three things really. You need a commitment from your leadership and your management and the whole organisation. You need the participation of everybody and the inclusion of everybody. And you need ongoing communication so that people are aware and can be trained in how the effects and the impacts of this in a positive way. Next. So I think just to sum up from a workplace culture perspective, to create an enabling environment for change in a mentally healthy workplace, you actually also need governments and employees and stakeholders all connected to the benefits of creating mentally healthy workplaces. Essentially, you need leadership, investment, you need a rights-based approach, you need integration into your workplace protocols and procedures. Of course, you need participation from everybody. It very much helps if you use evidence-based resources. And you need compliance. And this is where governments can come in as well as industry bodies, as far as setting up structures and frameworks. And in some cases, like in Australia, we have laws and regulations for mentally healthy workplaces now. So it is against the law, and workplaces can be held accountable legally for poor mental health and what we call psychosocial safety. Next. Sorry, I'm going through this because it's very important that we get to your questions as well. I just wanted to touch on the importance of social connection. We are, as a profession, very, very much in the middle of the intersection, between good social connection, including the use of social media, and a growing epidemic globally in loneliness. So there's a lot of research at the moment that's coming out, and it's consistently telling us that the more time people spend on social media, particularly those that are socially vulnerable, there is a direct correlation between higher levels of loneliness. This doesn't, even when we adjust for age groups, living conditions, employment, and health concerns, it still stands true. So we need more time spent digesting other people's happiness on social media. More time, digesting other people's happiness on social media may accelerate your own feelings of loneliness and distress. And there's a lot of research being done in this space. But from a professional communicator's perspective, we need to be very mindful of this around the content that we're creating and the way in which we're delivering that content. To look at the importance of social connection, it underpins this growing epidemic of loneliness. It's important to understand the role that loneliness has in our well-being and our mental health. Social connection creates a sense of belonging, purpose, and identity. It can reduce our stress levels. It does give us an improved sense of self-worth. It does boost our confidence. It does boost our levels of resilience, and it does make you feel more positive. Social connections are actually a critical pillar when it comes to good physical health as well. And Mateus, can we go to the next slide, please? I wanted to just touch on the role of prevention and promotion for mental health and well-being, and the critical role that professional communicators and public relations professionals play in this. In Australia, we have a 20 years of research and application of the role that the PR professionals play in promoting and preventing mental health and suicide particularly. The Mindframe program is evidence-based, and it is a series of guidelines that all our media and all our professional communicators follow and have done for 15 years. It is also comes with free training that is funded by the government for all of those professionals. The Public Relations Institute in Australia has played a key role in the development of those and the promotion of those. We've also got a program called Words and Images Matter, and this touches on the importance of the language that we use around in mental health and well-being, the role and how stigmatizing the language can be, and the role that we have in making sure that we're using the right language. So Words and Images Matter, again, provides very strong evidence-based guidelines around language and images, and an image database that can be used as well that's free. All of these resources are free for anyone around the world. And I know my colleagues at Everymind have worked with, over the past 2 years, the Malaysian, Indonesian and Bruneian government to roll out similar guidelines in those countries adapted for cultural settings. And the WHO recognises all of these guidelines. In Australia, we've also adapted and adopted a National Communications Charter, which is a commitment from individuals and organisations in the way that we talk about and communicate about mental health and suicide. All of these resources are free, and I can provide them to everybody who's interested via the Global Alliance platforms. Next slide, please. I just want to talk a little bit about what 2024 is going to look like. At the beginning, I sort of gave you a bit of a situation report on what all of the global sort of characteristics are going to be, things that are directly we're involved in, things that will be environmental. But as we lean into 2024, it's going to be important to take care of yourself and obviously those that your loved ones, to take care of your workplace, and if possible, to lean into the steps of creating mentally healthy workplaces for you, at least for your own organisations. Definitely to get the right training and professional development to support you through that. I think we have to be prepared for all contingencies. We need to evaluate and respond to what's going on much quicker. So therefore, we need to be quite flexible and agile. And as the Global Alliance has started to lobby and advocate, is we need to be responsible communicators. We play a really important role in the information and content and the tone of voice that we use and that our clients and our organisations use. So the role of responsible communicator has never been more important. I think, and I'd urge you to have a look at the Global Alliance website at the what a responsible communicator encompasses. And final slide, please, Matthias. And finally, I think when you think about the question I asked you right at the beginning, we cannot underestimate the value of self-care as a daily scenario for us, just like we exercise for our physical health and eat well. these things. Sleeping, you cannot underestimate the value of good sleep for your mental health. Keeping active and exercising, eating well, establishing really balanced routines for yourself. And I urge you to practice mindfulness. And I think Zarah is going to help us sort of understand a little bit more about that as well. But looking after your mental health and well-being has never been more important as we go into 2024. Please try and answer the question that I posed now that we've sort of gone through all this information. Final slide, Matthias. As I said, there's all of these resources and links to these resources that are available freely. We're going to put this slide deck up on the Global Alliance platforms for you to find and access after, I think after this webinar. But thank you very much. I very much enjoyed presenting this to you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. What you said is really on point. How you feel about yourself, your life, and the world around you can really impact your ability to thrive and enjoy your work. And now, to share with us tips on how to effectively manage stress and anxiety in our work, and to collaborate more on what Jenny has specified to us earlier, I would like to call on our next speaker who will corroborate the current PR and communications industry scenarios that Jenny has just shared and explained to us. She is a certified mental first aider for National Council for Behavioral Health in the US and a Stanford certified positive psychology and well-being coach. She is also a wellness advocate and an experienced communications consultant. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Ms. Sarah Hernaez.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad I'm able to connect with everyone today. And it's a topic that is very close to my heart, and it's something that I've been working on for the past 6 years in the workplace. So I'll be sharing my screen. Please do tell me if there's anything wrong, because nowadays we don't really know. So I'll be discussing with you the mental burden of the public relations profession. And it can be very challenging. Jenny was able to share so much data on it, and 90% going through mental health concerns in this profession. So I'll be talking to you also about what I do. So I handle the Wellness PH, which is basically an advocacy, and we do coaching and intervention, and we focus on the workplace. So we do coaching, intervention, awareness talk, as well as positive psychology interventions that range from self-love to mindfulness and meditation, down to resilience training and helping executives in the organizations start and handle supportive conversations towards the people in the organization and towards people who are going through mental health concerns. But prior to all of this, I was a public relations professional. So this is actually very close to my heart, and you can actually say this is exactly why I started to do the things I am doing now, because the public relations profession is not exactly a bed of roses. So when we talk about the public relations profession, sometimes I akin it to the little Dutch boy who basically started plugging a hole on the dike and making sure that none of the water breaks through. And he went through that cold overnight up until the time villagers were able to help him. Sometimes we feel alone, that loneliness that public relations professionals feel, because we're the only ones who actually know about this little crisis in the organization, and the buck stops there. So next to the public relations professional, HR is also very high in terms of stress. But what makes the public relations professional different? We are so exposed to the global changes, whether it be political, economic, social, or technological changes that are going through and will affect and are affecting the organization. The thing with this is Even when Jenny was talking about it earlier, it was already starting to stress us out. Just thinking about 64 countries having different legislation, different leadership, that is already starting to stress us out because it will affect the organizations that we are part of. Not only that, not only those political changes, but there are economic shifts. We have to think about the generation gap, the tech advances, and this level of wokeness the world is going through. There, a lot of people are calling it the new world or the new normal, and this can be very challenging. Sometimes this role of the little Dutch boy or the PR profession means not just plugging one hole, but plugging multiple holes, and we only have several digits on our finger. So it is quite challenging and it is quite stressful. When we talk about stress, and I will reiterate what stress is about. Stress is really a response to a demand or a threat, whether real or imagined. So when you think about those 64 countries going through elections, you are already having a surge of stress hormones called cortisol and adrenaline in your body that comes from your brain or your hypothalamus, your pituitary glands, and adrenal glands. So just thinking about those stressors is already giving you a surge of stress hormones. Jenny also mentioned that it will give you physiological and psychological effects, and this is what you call chronic stress. So psychological effects can also be your anxiety, your panic attacks, PTSD even. There's a very high level of PTSD in the public relations profession because of all the trauma that we go through. Or we are exposed to. So it is a response to a demand or threat, whether real or imagined. So when we start addressing these problems, it started to be imagined because we were thinking about it, and it becomes real because we have to address it. So there's so much stressor, so much cortisol and adrenaline going through or surging through our bodies. Even writing that press release is already starting to affect us. So it can be very difficult. Why has this evolved this way? Because again, the mental health the public relations profession is the catch-all for all the stories and issues in an organization. When we started the public relations, I'm so sorry, I will date myself. But when we talk about the 90s, when you talk about the public relations profession, it was such a bright and shiny little job. Oh, it's nice. We will be writing up our press releases, talk about the stories, and we'll be wearing our suits. We'll be the corporate spokesperson, and we'll have stories in 1 to 2 weeks that we have to process, distill, filter, amplify, and overall influence people every 1 to 2 weeks. In fact, I'm pretty sure a lot of you went through a phase in your lives where you had to handle multiple organizations because stories were far and few. I went through that. I had to handle conglomerates. So because stories were far and few. And then nowadays, especially in the past 5 years, we have technology and social media coming in. And just like gremlins, they multiplied. So the stories of 1 to 2 weeks or even a 6 month trend became 6 hours. And we used to say that stories had a life. Now we literally see it live. It's living and breathing every time we refresh the page. So in a 6 hour period, we have to distill multiple stories. We have to process it. We have to amplify it, and we have to push people to be influenced by it. Not only that, we now have to think about, because of the volume and the changes, now we have to think about the photography, the social media aspects, the copy. Is it trending? Can we trend it? Can we make our responses viral? Do we have to do a post mortem? Are the words or the tone that we are releasing, politically correct? Is it woke enough? Worst of all, nowadays we even have to deal with the ghost of our past press release. So it is very stressful nowadays. Not only is it physically stressful because this these are different jobs and multiple stories, no sleep, 24/7 monitoring. Not only is it physically stressful, it is also a challenge to our multiplicity. We have to tackle all of these roles at the same time, sometimes even if we don't know how to do it. And it has to be done right away. You are a one-man media center, one-man newsroom, and it's painful because just like that little boy, we sometimes feel alone, and it can be challenging. And it also challenges our authenticity because not only are we dealing with the stories of the organization that we have, we also are going through our own level of change, level of change of opinions, change of what is correct and right and wrong for us, and it starts challenging our authenticity. And this is the biggest burden that we can have as a PR profession because, again, what used to be traumatic for what used to be not traumatic for us, is now challenging for us to accept because there's a level of wokeness in the world right now, and there's a level of higher level of thinking. Why is this? When we used to think that the lower or younger generation, like our Gen Alphas and Gen Zs, used to be more sensitive. Now we are starting to be able to accept and understand how they think. And a lot of the things that we do are starting to challenge us as well. Because let's look at the 80-20 principle. 26% of the workforce right now is Gen Z. Even if they're not in a position of power, their opinion is influencing everyone else. And if we are not influenced by it and we are not challenged by it and we are not accepting and eventually applying it, we will have a challenging time adjusting as well. Because I do get this a lot from the organizations I work with. 5 years ago, I would hear stories of people who would say, or leaders in organizations who would say that this new generation coming in the workplace are kind of sensitive, which is challenging for me to debunk, nor is it something that is I um I support. I tell the leaders that they have their own place. And eventually now there's more of them influencing, and this is the time for us to actually adjust. So all of these things really do bring a mental burden for us. But right now, what we're talking about is the public relations profession. And we cannot um, negate the fact that you are human and there is no such thing as work-life balance. Because when you look at our phone right here on our slide, it is a myriad of professional and personal concerns. So sometimes we start the day very early in the morning. We get a text message from our CEO or Mancom or country president or whoever you report to and says, the budget has been cut. Please draft the press release and or announcement for the stakeholders. Early in the morning, fine, I have energy. I had a great breakfast. And you will reply, okay, I'll inform the team. I'm sure it will be fine, quite understandable. Then you get a message from your partner. Mortgage is due and I'm a little short this month. Maybe you can help. Okay, that's fine. You were able to save. The pandemic was difficult for your partner. I totally understand. I'm there for him. We are a family. I'm there for her. No? Meeting has been moved to 8 p.m. tonight. We need the report now. You're tired. It's noon. It's difficult. So you start answering, okay. When you reach 4 p.m., you go to the pantry, you go to the water cooler, and you just hear someone say, you know, Jane from accounting said that your work really is just all fluff. It's really not affecting the job, you know, the whole organization. You just make all of these press release, and all you can just say is, hey, and then you get that message at 5 p.m. What are we having for dinner? This is a very simple question. And for a lot of people, this is actually very stressful. If you're a mom, or if you're a homemaker, if you're someone who um, brings home the dinner, it can be very stressful to answer this question. And it could be what could break the camel's back. And that's three dots that you see there. That's so important because that's where you regulate your nervous system. You take a deep breath, and that's where resilience begins. But not a lot of people are able to just take that pause and push through with the day. So that's how what mental health is about. It's really being able to cope with your daily life normally and productively without breaking as much, you know, because feelings are normal, and feel all feelings are valid. And why do people say this? And we hear this a lot. All feelings are valid because anger, sadness, frustration, being anxious, being even depressed a little, those are normal feelings of the human being. So if you're able to push through that question of what are we having for dinner, despite everything that you have gone through, then that is someone who is coping with their mental health. It does not mean that you have no problems. It does not mean that you have no stress because stress will always be there. So, what you see here is not just the mental burden of the professional, PR professional, but it is the mental burden of you because you are human, and it all siphons down to one body. There's no such thing as work-life balance. So what do? Give yourself a fighting chance. Jenny was able to give quite a lot of examples on how to handle mental health, but let's expand on it further. So give yourself a fighting chance to be able to tackle things on a daily basis. So very quickly, we'll go through four elements that they're pretty easy to remember. One would be physical. So when I talk about exercise, we just talk about movement. It can be quick movements in a day that you can do. You can do 5 minutes of jumping jacks, 5 minutes of walking. So that's pretty easy because it gives you the endorphins that you need and gives you a quick boost of energy. So if you're feeling a little bit sluggish in a day, just do jumping jacks, turn on the music, and just dance around. You can eat healthy, and a lot of people hate it when I present this slide because there's exercise and there's eating healthy. So when we talk about healthy, eat for your brain. Everything affects your brain. Again, the mind, the body, and the spirit connection is very strong. So if you talk about food affecting your body, the coffee that you have every single day that wakes you up affects you. So imagine every single morsel that you eat in a day and how it affects your mental health. So eat food that's high in vitamin B, B6, B12, vitamin B, melatonin, folic acid, and omega-3 fatty acids. Sleep is also very important. Why? Because we, again, are human beings. We are not nocturnal beings. And the influx of jobs that come in, the 24/7 media monitoring that you are going through, that affects you as well. Because our body can only naturally excrete the happy hormones or your serotonin and your dopamine from 10 in the evening to 2 in the morning. And that's what people tend to forget. It can only naturally produce in our brain and in our body from 10 in the evening to 2 in the morning. So what are you doing from 10 to 2? You could probably be going through emails. You could probably be watching Netflix just to decompress. You could probably be still in a meeting. So make sure sleep is so important for you and your body. The first thing your psychiatrist and psychologists will ask you if you do have a checkup with them is, have you been sleeping well? And how has your sleeping pattern been? Mental. Why? Because again, stress is whether it's real or imagined. So make sure that you are able to ground yourself or pull yourself from a negative thought process by doing something that will distract you or pull you away, no? Bring you back to earth, or that's what you call grounding. So what are quick grounding exercises? You can take a shower, that's very effective. You can anything that will involve all your senses. I can actually tell you that drawing is one of the best ways to ground yourself, but if you don't know how to draw and that will just stress you out, forget it. So I'm just telling you to involve all your senses. For a lot of people, eating is a grounding exercise. Why? When you grab that orange, open it up, you smell it up, and start eating it, you forget those stressors. So if you know you cope with stress through eating, choose the food that you will eat. Change the things that you do to cope. Your body is also designed to protect itself. I'm saying this. Your body is designed to protect itself. So you are already probably doing something that will ground you and pull you away from these negative thoughts. For me, when I used to be highly stressed over a story that breaks, I shut down my laptop and I start cleaning my work area. That was my grounding exercise. There are some people who actually stand up and start walking around. There are some people who have water bottles that are half filled, but they stand up and refill it filled at the water cooler. This is a grounding exercise. So try to be aware of how you cope with stress. What grounds you? What makes you pull away from those thoughts and challenge those thoughts as well? Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that this is the company's story. This is not mine. So make sure that you are able to do that. So when we talk about wellness, we are not talking about having massages or manicures and pedicures, mani-pedi, and going shopping. It's about mind rest and making sure that our brain is at rest. So we have to also always make sure that our brain is at rest because it's pointless to be on vacation but still thinking about the problems you have at work. Those stress hormones will still surge in your body. We will also be talking about the social emotional, and this means doing something new and trying to have fun while doing it. Why is doing something new very important? You don't have to pick up a new hobby. If you drink coffee with your right hand, you can start drinking it with your left hand. If you brush your teeth with your right hand, you can start brushing your teeth with your left hand. If you sleep on the right side of the bed, you can start sleeping on the left side of the bed. These slight changes on a daily basis allows your brain to be more receptive to changes. And that's exactly what you need now in 2024. Because 2024, as Jenny mentioned, is the year of uncertainty. You have to make sure that your brain is more receptive to changes and will be able to adjust to changes right away. For people my age, above 45, almost 50, it can be very difficult to accept changes. We have our ways. But for children, they come in, make friends with a ton of little other kids, and different changes are something that they are used to because the world is new to them. And when they are learning, they are also having fun because our brain is also more receptive to changes. So try to do something new in a day that's different. Different patterns in terms of going to work, different route. You can be using a different colored pen, and that will really help you shift your brain and allow it to be more used to different changes. Because sometimes it's these changes that bring us stress. Spiritual, and when I talk about spiritual, I'm not talking I'm not talking about it in a religious sense. When we talk about spiritual, we can also talk about spiritual practices like meditation and prayer, which basically brings the same thing. It allows your brain to be in a mindful and restful state or in a theta brainwave state where there is more clarity. So is what does it have in common? When we talk about meditation and prayer, you close your eyes, you listen to the word of God, or you close your eyes and you just listen to your own breathing and thoughts and their silence, and you allow your brain to rest. So it gives you so much clarity after. And that's a physiological effect of the spiritual practices. Apart from the fact that, there are a lot of things in this world, and I think I can say this for most people in this room, that we cannot figure out. Faith basically helps us push through the day. So when we talk about the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects and what we can do for ourselves, we can also talk about what can we do for ourselves at work. So when we talk about your multiplicity and the multiple roles that you do and the multiple talents that you have to show at work, and this challenge of multiplicity of you, then what we can do at work, it's really the multiplicity of many. Learn to empower and train people at work. If you do media handling, train people for media handling. Train people to be spokespersons of the organization because it helps that the little Dutch boy have other people helping them with the different holes in the organization. It can be challenging and it may not be something that we are used to, but it is something that is acceptable now in this era of collaboration with this new generation. So we need as much help as we can, and we should learn to ask for help. Secondly, when we talk about our stories and the stories that we handle, make sure that you belong in an organization that is authentic to you and authentic and aligned with your values. Because sometimes the challenges that we have are the stories that we have to face and the stories that we have to release. If it is not aligned with your values, then it won't be authentic to you and it will bother you on a daily basis. The stories that we release, as Jenny mentioned earlier, are also so important. Does this resonate to many? Is this authentic to many? Or is this a story that is crafted, designed, and um, created just to have a certain image? It may not be real. So it may also send out the wrong message outside. We have to remember that at this day and age, authenticity and relatability is so important. And authenticity, people can sniff out excuse me, people can sniff out inauthenticity very easily. They can do their research, send you screenshots and receipts so very easily nowadays. So if it is aligned to your values, it is aligned to the values of a lot of people. Have I feel that we should have less fear in showing authentic stories out there because it is also the only way we can show our humanity and our humanness, which can help you so much in your job and help you so much with your mental health. So I leave you with these four things, especially when we talk about the PR profession and the things that we do. Learn to observe the stories and the things that you do and not absorb the stories and the things that you do. Keep things simple and basic so that we will be more agile in 2024 because there will be a lot of surprises. So there should be space for these surprises as well. Learn to nurture yourself. There's a lot of talk about self-care, but it's very challenging to do self-care towards a person that you do not love. So let us emphasize on self-love as well. How can you love yourself more? And make decisions for the now. News is so fast nowadays that it gives us also the opportunity to just decide for the now and deal with the problems that will come in the future as well. To make the decisions for the now so that you will not bog yourself with the problems of the future. So thank you so much. I think we will be having our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Jenny. Actually, I should say this is information overload from my end because I am really, keenly listening in everything that you both are saying. In fact, what struck me the most and what retained in what I heard from both of you are the triggers for mental health. I can just wrap it up into four: workplaces, because of COVID, there are a lot of changes. Intensity of issues and reactions in our environment, like war, impact of AI or more of their technology, and the 64 plus national elections, the geopolitical instability. So with all this, 2024 at the on-site, it's very difficult to move forward if we just look and think about all these things. So my question is, for both of you, people with mental illness often face a stigma. They are usually viewed in a negative way or threatened differently and made to feel ashamed or worthless compared to other people. Stigma could also lead to discrimination, which in turn can make their mental illness worse. The question is, how do you think can communications practitioners help in ensuring that this practice is lessened, if not stopped altogether, considering that, we have all these heavy triggers on hand?
Um, I think that the role that public relations communications professionals can play, I think I said, is absolutely critical. We know in Australia and a number of our countries that we've shared this with, that the positive impact and influence that we can have on stigma and discrimination by the practices, responsible practices that as communicators we employ, the language we use, the images that we use. We need to be very, very mindful of how that represents mental ill health and suicide. We need to and understand how that can be triggering and stigmatizing and discriminatory. And we need to train ourselves and our colleagues to be very conscious and aware of these. So when they're creating their content, their strategies and their programs, and when they're providing advice to clients and to leaders of their organization, that this is very front of mind, so that the organization can have a rights-based approach to the way that they communicate, and they are very conscious and authentic in the way they go about that.
All right. How about you, Sarah? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. For mental health perspective, basically, when we talk about the stigma, what could really help us would be to normalize the conversation. And this is where the PR practice comes in handy, making sure that when we talk about mental health concerns, it is not something that is shunned or feared. It's as simple as saying that, well, basically, it's a diagnosable concern. So when we talk about a mental health issue, basically it's as simple as talking about any other diagnosable concern like diabetes. And I say this a lot to a lot of organizations. Um, when we talk about mental health, it is generally affected by genetics, genetic predisposition, um, environmental stressors, and uh, n- neurobiological changes in your body. So when we talk about these three things, these are also something that you see in a lot of conditions like diabetes. No? If your parents or your family members have um, diabetes, of course, it's genetic. If it's a chemical change in your body, it's also there. If you have too much sugar in your home and you eat too much Krispy Kreme, then it's an environmental stress. But nobody basically is scared of diabetes, nor do they poke fun towards someone who has a condition like diabetes. So we have to make sure that it is something that we normally speak about, not be afraid of, because the moment we are able to see that condition as what it is and be able to truly understand it, then we are able to accept it and be able to treat it and be able to allow other people to come out, ask for help, and not be afraid to have the condition as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah. One thing that struck me the most was when Jenny mentioned that, because everything that Sarah and Jenny are talking about are things that could help, especially in our workplace. But what's interesting with what Jenny presented is that she mentioned about how Australia has now a national communications charter that's being enforced. Can you please share how this charter is helping practitioners in your country become even more responsible communicators?
Sure. Um, I think I need to preface this with the communications charter came about on as the next step to all of the training and education that has happened around the Mindframe program. The Mindframe program guidelines and training exists in PR and journalism courses in all our universities. It exists and available for free, paid for by the government in all of our workplaces, and all newsrooms in Australia are trained in the Mindframe program. So on that foundation, we then developed the evidence-based communications charter. It was launched by the government with the support of the government, and through the Public Relations Institute and through all of those, the network and stakeholder programs, they did a big promotion and they launched it and everybody signed it and quite proudly promotes that they're a signatory to the communications charter. Part of the communications charter also is a life and mind web portal where we all can access up-to-date information, we can share resources, and it's basically a community of practice that is paid for by the government.
Wow, that's great to know. Definitely the world should learn from Australia on this one because this is badly needed in all
Yeah.
respects. So kudos to your government because this is something that I think most countries would want to have in protection and in support of the health and well-being of our people. Now, thank you for that, Jenny. For Sarah, I like your story about the little Dutch boy plugging a small hole, a disaster waiting to happen, and the feeling all alone in this task because he's the only one who knows the possible crisis that this situation can bring. As PR practitioners, we often feel this way. Uh-huh. My question for you is, do you think today's technology advances can help lessen the number of little Dutch boys of PR? Since it's now easier to exchange ideas and even pass to share information, what can you say about that? Please expound.
Probably yes, because technology will always be a tool. It's really up to us and how we use it. So if we use it to collaborate and be able to benchmark stories and how we handle different crises, then that would be good. What is challenging in our function? The challenging part is that 80% of the things that PR practitioners do, we can't actually share.
Mm-hmm.
That's very challenging. So that is the challenge now. How will we be able to collaborate without compromising confidentiality of the functions that we do at work?
Mm-hmm.
But technology and social media will always be a tool that can easily be used depending on how you want to use it. But the challenge is how do we keep the confidentiality?
Mhm, mhm. Oh, that's great. That's great. Because I think Jenny mentioned that one of the triggers is impacts of AI use, impacts of technology. So if we're not gonna be abreast of all these things, then our work would be more stressful. So I think I agree with you that we have to really look into this deeper. Now, for both of you, Jenny and Sarah, as a mental health advocate, what is the most common thing that you hear from people living with mental health conditions? What do you do to tell them to make them feel better?
Um, I think firstly, it's kindness and empathy and having a genuine care and understanding for how the challenges that they face, both in the illness or disorder that they have, but also in the impact that people's judgment and discrimination and stigma can have upon them. If they're a work colleague or a family member, then normalizing and your understanding of their disorder or mental ill health in general is the first thing you should be doing, and practicing that real compassion and kindness as they often face with the difficulties that their disorder often brings to them, but also embracing all of the quirks that and their personalities that as a full human being is basically the way that we need to approach it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, that's good. There are a lot of questions from
Oh,
we got from them, the target attendees, our attendees. One thing is, what role does self-care play in managing mental health, and how can I incorporate it into my routine?
you want to take that, Zarah?
All right. When we talk about self care, I think I mentioned earlier, there are many aspects to self care. One would be the physical aspects,
Mm-hmm,
um, which would mean your exercise, you're eating healthy, which I mentioned earlier. It will affect you, the food that you eat on a daily basis. The exercise or lack thereof will affect you, or lack of movement. That's exactly why during the pandemic, a lot of people really got into a level of depression because there was no movement. We were on survival mode and we were eating processed food and sugar the whole time during the pandemic because it was easy to eat and it was easy to, um, you know, do at home. So that helped a lot. So that's the physical aspect. What other aspects would be the mental portion of your self-care? Am I applying boundaries? Am I loving myself? So when we talk about self-love, and there are a lot of misconceptions about self-love and saying, oh, it's so selfish. But basically just flip it. How do I show love towards others? And am I doing it towards myself? So if
mm-hmm,
you are giving your dog really nice, expensive food and not allowing them to have junk, and but you yourself are eating a lot of Cheetos, and that includes me, by the way, then am I really loving myself in such a way? So self care is a very broad term, and it is something that you can uh, develop on your own. How will I take care of myself in order for me to be able to address the um, concerns outside of myself, no, the external factors that basically are plaguing me. So take time to sit down and evaluate how you do take care of yourself on a daily basis. And Jenny asked that question at the very beginning of her presentation. How have you been taking care of yourself in the past 4 years? So give yourself a few minutes of a day may even take an hour. Just sit down, list it down, and see where the gaps are.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another question. How do you see for both of you? I think we can take two more questions. How do you see the future of PR evolving, especially with the rise of generative AI, which is seen as having the potential to take away jobs that people normally do? Do you think AI can also have an effect on the next generation of PR practitioners or communicators' mental health, insofar as dependence on machines, less reliance on human thinking, less mental exercises is concerned? Please expound.
I'll take the beginning of this one. We were having a good chat about this earlier. AI and and all of its components is, and Zara said this, it is just a tool. What we need to be, yes, it will help us automate a lot of things that we do, and we need to consider and train ourselves to use it to our benefit. What will I see it doing is it will take away all of the mundane tasks, the repetitive tasks. But this tool that we have in our heads, it's the humanity of what we do and how we do it, our ability to connect to human beings, understand community, the way that society is functioning. That is our power, and that is our sort of secret weapon. But I think we need to have a higher purpose approach to what we do, and be very careful of the way that we're shifting our workforce, so that they are training to use the new tools and being shifted into that higher order of thinking.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Sarah, you have a take on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really about pushing your humanity. And Jenny said that is our superpower. But then when we talk about that humanity, we're also talking about our own vulnerabilities and mistakes. But the funny thing about these humanities, vulnerabilities and mistakes is what distinguishes us from being AI. So a lot of people are a little bit more forgiving of these mistakes. And I think we see these memes about, oh, the intern just posted something on the social media page and everyone gets a laugh over the mistake, or what we used to deem as mistakes, but turn out to be viral, soft, and warm stories about interns working and just doing their best, and how we have our own stories as well when we were younger. And this is pretty common nowadays. How we as human beings are able to accept these vulnerabilities and quote unquote mistakes, which are basically authentic, real human stories. And this is something that AI can never copy.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. And this is the last question before we proceed to the synopsis to be given to us by the chairperson, Ms. Fiona Cassidy. What can you leave our participants today, the very authentic way on how they could face all these triggers with regards to our mental health? What are the key takeaways that you want to leave behind in this presentation this afternoon? Let's do that first with Jenny.
I'll do this by telling a little story. In Australia, I was part of leading a communications team that led the mental health response to the pandemic. The triggers were every day. The volume and stress of that content and the environmental factors were immense and continued for 2 years. Our team worked round the clock, as I did, and so did 100 or so of our colleagues. We had to practice active mental self-care in our workplace and with our teams. We had a routine of checking in with individuals and with the teams, because we were all working remotely. And we actually had exercises, physical and mental. We had programs that we needed to do to take care of our mental health. We also, because it was an extreme situation, we had counsellors on standby all the time. And that's a duty of care that the employer had, but it was necessary, just like any frontline workers, emergency workers do. So you've got to design the situation so that it's fit for purpose, and not discount or ignore the impact that it's going to have on your workers and their families and their support teams if necessary, but it needs to be front of mind.
Right. That's really, really important. In fact, I would like to ask, you are doing so much effort and good efforts in Australia, and would like to ask if the country and your community has plans to spread the word, in different countries as well, because a lot of countries doesn't have this established yet. So, what are the plans in Australia, beyond Australia? To spread this news, because this is a good example of how to do things.
I think, look, I have got to give credit to my dear colleague, Dr. Jaylee Skean, who leads the Institute, Every Mind. They've created all of this. They are the world leaders. Through my previous role, we engaged, so they've worked with the Brunei governments, the Malaysian governments, and the Indonesian governments already over the past couple of years to help share all of this, these resources and information and training. The WHO we work very closely with to disseminate and build up programs, but it is something that the international engagement with our colleagues and stakeholders is very much front of mind.
Oh, that's great to know. That's great to know. And maybe, Sarah, it's good to collaborate with Jenny on this one.
Yeah, it would be
For the
great.
Philippines. Yes, yes. Now, for
Yeah.
Sarah, what's the very thing that you want to leave behind among our participants right now?
Number one, it can be challenging to influence your organization to be able to have mentally healthy practices. It is. I work with a lot of human resources in different organizations. Start with your sphere of influence. Start in your own department. Start in your own group. Start with the people who report to you. Start with your friends who are at work. Practice. Number one, boundaries. Respecting the boundaries and making sure that those calls don't go beyond 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. for that matter, depends on what country you're in. Make sure that you are able to respect leaves when they are on leaves. Those simple things help a lot. It could be something that's very simple, but those things help a lot. Really respecting the boundaries of other people, not um, being offended by people when they are on break, and at the same time, not judging people when they are on break. So those simple things can help a lot. But um, I, it was mentioned earlier that there are practices that are being done in different organizations now, even here in the Philippines, and we're talking about from making sure that your recruitment practices are basically considering location and vicinity of the employees, making sure that there are safety protocol discussions in terms of mental health, making sure that in terms of compensation and packages, the flexibility of the work schedules to consider. All of these things are lessons of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we forget so easily.
Mm-hmm.
So try to remember the lessons of the pandemic, the availability of mental health services. It is not a fad. This is the way of the world now. And I say this to a lot of practitioners, HR practitioners, and a lot of management teams. It is not a fad. This is something that this is a new way of living that we wish in our generation we had. So it's about
Yeah.
time that we pass it on to the next generation. So these are just simple considerations, different things that organizations are doing, even down to policies on what professionalism is, and what is good work behavior, what are mental health leaves even, or Jenny mentioned confidentiality and anti-discrimination policies and reviewing of these things, or organizations that are result oriented and not time based, or policies on boundaries of time, like because of the Viber, WhatsApp groups that we have, learning how to understand these things, or even I mentioned earlier, training, counseling, and coaching systems. So I'm on retainer for a lot of organizations so that I'll be able to coach employees as well. So these things are pretty simple, but if you cannot start these things right away and advocate for these things, which by the way, our job is to influence. So I'm pretty sure and I believe you guys can do it. If you cannot push for these things right away, start with your sphere of influence. It can start with one or two people. And again, 80-20. 20% in the organization will start doing it. Everyone else will follow suit.
Mm. All right. Thank you so much. Those were all spot on from Jenny and Sarah. I think, yeah, the PR practitioners, the communication practitioners are at the front of making people realize how the stigma can be broken and how we can, really help, address the issue on mental health and well-being. Now, thank you so much to both of you. There are some questions actually which I wasn't able to uh raise today because I think we lack time because we have to wrap up. Sorry for that, but we will try our very best to answer the questions you posted here. And if you have questions, please feel free to send it over to us so that we can facilitate the giving you the answers to those questions. Now, of course, to give us the synopsis and the conclusion to this afternoon's health and well-being webinar, I would like to call in our chairperson for the health and well-being in Global Alliance, Miss Fiona Cassidy.
Thank you, Anna, and a huge sincere thanks to both Jenny and Zarah. We got asked the question, how often have you thought or taken care of your mental health? And then Jenny went on to show us some pretty damning statistics and influence on poor mental health conditions, which actually affect us both professionally and personally. But what she gave us were a number of tools that we, as both people, humans first, and then practitioners, can do. We need to protect, promote, and support mental health initiatives with ourselves and through our organisations. And one that particularly stuck with me is safety practices for what we're exposed to in our daily working lives. Jenny went on to tell us that social connections are critical, and we know that words and images matter. Her leaving words for us, or the summary, were we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our workplaces. We need to be part of creating a mental healthy workplace. And it can just start with saying, how are you? Can I make you a coffee? We need to influence people to ensure that we get the training and professional development to be good as we can be, and we need to be prepared. And just like good comms, we need to evaluate and respond, and we need to make a responsible commitment. Sarah talked to us about the mental burdens of being a PR practitioner, and that sometimes we forget we are exposed to the social, economic, and political environments, and that they impact on our organisations and through default impact on us. We're challenged around our own authenticity, and we need to ensure that we hear the 26% of Gen Z that are now part of our workforce. Sarah left us with some pretty cool words, a fighting chance to be good. And out of that, there were 4 things we need to always consider in our own space and the way it affects us. The first is the physical. What do? We need to exercise, we need to eat healthily, we need to sleep. We need to think about our own mental well-being. We need to ground ourselves. We need to challenge our thoughts. And my big takeout is we need our mind to rest. We need to think about our social and emotional side and do something new, whether it be that left hand or right hand with the coffee. And we do need to create opportunities to have fun. And then whatever we believe in, we need that spiritual connection that will help us. As Sarah said, our body is designed to protect ourselves. Her 4 points to close were observe, not absorb. Keep things simple and basic. Learn to nurture yourself and make decisions for now. Today has been that opportunity to listen to 2 amazing experts, and I'm going to call them experts, who have taken the time to provide us with the real skills that we can take into our workplace. It's a blessed way to finish what has been an encouraging month for all of us to take that step towards mental health and well-being. But ladies and gentlemen, it's really important that it is an everyday event. To Anna, who's organised us, to Mateus, who's awake in Berlin and very, very early in the morning. Thank you so much for all you've done. And to Sarah and Jenny, we will take your expertise. We're going to pop it up on our website, and I'm sure there will be many, many questions. My leaving thought for you all is do something every day for your own health and well-being.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Yeah, that's very well put. It's really a good day today that we've heard from all 3 of them how important the mental and health well-being is. In fact, I am starting to think of how to discuss it with our people at Ardent Communications, because this is really, really important to kick off the year. Health and mental wealth is really important in doing the job that we're doing. So, to end this, I would like to inform everyone that, as what Jenny mentioned, there are a lot of links based on the data that she presented, and you can have access to all of those links. We will give you for all our attendees, we will give you a letter determining how you can access all of this at GA website. And also, we will give you the deck that was presented by both Sarah and Jenny, so you could use that in your respective companies. So, with that, we'd like to end this session, and we'd like to thank everyone for participating and joining us. Thank you so much, and have a good day, everyone.